Hey, ladies.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Educator Wellness Revolution podcast. We have a wonderful guest with us today. Dr. Nia Nun is joining us from New York, and
Yeah,
we're
thank
going to talk
you.
about culture today. So, welcome, Dr. Nia.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm excited to be here.
And we have our wonderful co host, Dominique Moore, with us.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It's so good to see you, ladies.
Indeed.
This is like Friday at 4 o'clock is like our last thing of the week, right? But I feel like it's like a nice, cozy way to close out our dreary day here in DC. What's the weather like in New York?
Oh, the same. I'm just glad it's not snowing right now, but we're not far from that.
Why don't you start by introducing yourself and give us a little bit of who you are, Dr. Nia.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you again for the invitation. I've been really excited about having this time with you all. I'm connecting with you all from Ithaca, New York. I have the glorious responsibility of preparing teachers for the world. I serve as the department chair and an associate professor at Ithaca College in education, all the educational psychology courses. I'm actually really excited. I'm teaching Black feminist alchemy next semester. I haven't taught that in years,
Wow.
but it's been a joy to have this responsibility and to lead some incredible folks. In addition to that, oftentimes I introduce myself as like in a pyramid. So there's my role in higher education, but I also run a performing arts program here in Ithaca, a non-for-profit. It's called CUMEP, which stands for Community Unity Music Education Program. So I'll mention that. In addition, I've been engaged in consulting and coaching and really sharing my methodologies and practices with folks. And much of my work I ground in this theoretical perspective I call radical vulnerability. So I'll definitely be acknowledging that as part of our processing today. And let's see, I am a mama of three boys that are essentially men. My children are 22, 18, and 15 years old. And I have the pleasure of working and leading in the community where I was born and raised. So I tell everyone I wear multiple head wraps in my hometown. And I don't know, my favorite color is green, and I'm a yogi, and I'm just happy to have this time with you all. So thanks again for the invitation.
Um, y- Thank you for being here. And there's so many things. Well, alchemy, I feel like we're going to come back to alchemy in this conversation because I think that is like a powerful word. Vulnerability. And I feel like we could ask you about anything and you would give us a really wise answer. But we are going to focus this conversation on culture within
Please,
schools
yeah.
because
Hmm.
it is something we talk about all the time. And it is so important, as we all know, to the outcomes that our students have. And yet, I don't feel like there's always great frameworks or tools when people talk about things like team building or building culture. So,
Sure.
yeah, yeah. So, Dominique, you want to add anything on that?
I just am really excited to have the conversation today. I know that school culture is transformative. The way I look at school culture is much like we probably look at school engagement from the inside, is that if our parents are engaged and our students are successful, what if our teachers are engaged and our school is successful?
That's it.
As somebody who has been in different school systems and experienced different principals and is now on the other side and experience different districts, I'm very passionate about school culture because we know how much that can make or break teachers. As we talk about educator wellness, we know how that can lean on their professional development and things like that. So I'm just really interested to get into it. So
So let's start
Mhm.
with the basics. What does having a culture really mean? And like why is like a positive culture like important and a toxic culture bad? And like how do you see all that?
Yes. Oh, this is so good. So when I'm talking about culture, oftentimes I'm talking about like the lived emotional experience of a community. It's about the rhythm that people walk into each day, unspoken norms, and like the ways in which we greet one another. and how we respond to conflict is huge, how we repair any harm, and even how we celebrate ourselves in especially a learning environment. So in my work, as I mentioned, radical vulnerability, and this comes through so much in the curriculum of COMEP, culture is something that you study before you try to change anything, right? Being honest and naming the existing culture. So we just observe those like micro moments in dynamics, interactions, even in the hallway, the tone of our meetings and connections with one another. So, who gets greeted warmly versus who gets overlooked, right? I've walked into school buildings and people don't say hello. And so just even being able to unpack that and to celebrate it when it's different, when it's known, that those small moments are actually the blueprint of the community. So a positive culture is one where people feel grounded, where they feel welcomed and safe to show up as themselves, and feel or know that they will be honored. So a toxic culture is one where people brace themselves, are oftentimes guarded, and when people are just unable in some cases to learn or to teach or collaborate in some of the most meaningful ways. So schools and even after school programs, camps, learning special spaces where we gather, feel the impact immediately in the behavior, the morale, and the connection that exists. So, yeah, it's felt. It's an experience of belonging, of safety and possibility.
Mhm. I love the fact that you brought up community. I
Come
love the
on.
fact that community is in your school name. One of the things that we advocate for up here in DC with Empower Ed is community schools. And that's one of the things that we are really trying to expand. And as I was doing some research and listening to some of the things that you um, produce, community seems to be at the center of
Absolutely.
which takes us right into our next question, Gracie, if you don't mind. Ready? All right. So, what are some of the building blocks for a positive school culture? I know you named some things like community, out of school time programs, and things of that nature. But are there one or two elements that you feel are more important? And tell us about some schools that have built positive school cultures.
Yes, no, I'm so appreciative of this question too, and I mapped out about four that I want to process, but ultimately, as I mentioned, studying the existing culture first, right? That we can't transform anything that we haven't taken the time to understand or to even like name what exists. Another component that is significant is the concept of radical vulnerability. And when I'm saying radical vulnerability, I'm talking about a collective self-study, right? The ways in which we're modeling our own processes. So in this case, with radical vulnerability and thinking about teachers, thinking about adults, I'm thinking about the ways in which adults model honesty, model humanity, and accountability without shame, but that this can create psychological safety for the students to do the same thing. And as I was thinking about this concept, I was thinking an example are the ways in which we apologize to our students. I have a couple circumstances from the past where I have apologized to young people in public settings. So one quick example. This goes back to my school psychology days. I was a school psychologist at the elementary school that I attended. Very protective, very proud of my school. And the fifth graders, this is, oh gosh, this is almost, yeah, a long, long time ago, almost 20 years ago. And the fifth graders, they had a substitute. Okay. And they were bugging out on this substitute. I mean, they were, and she was really, really hot. It was just really, really intense. and I didn't help. I went in there and I just hollered at them the same way, it was just, and that was so it's out of character. I'm pretty stern, and if anything, I make a joke or sing a song to shift behavior for children. But in this case, I was just like, "What's going on?" I was just added to the fire. It was really, really intense. Come to find out, the substitute, there were some issues that were out of control. Long story short, after things calmed down, I went back to the whole class and I was like, "Look, y'all, I apologize for my response. I needed to ask more questions. I needed to come in with a calmer demeanor about the dynamics." And I told him the truth. I'm like, "I don't like the way people talk about us out in this community." And so there was like a sense of embarrassment. Here's this person from the outside in, and I see you all acting, and not to give excuses, but I went into some of the foundation of what had me so hot. There was this embarrassment. So they're fifth graders, right? They're 9, 10 years old. And I'm in the community that I, worked in, was raised in, all of that. And there's still one young lady who works for me. And she's what, 26, 27, and she's brought it up. She brought up how powerful it was that I took the time to stop and apologize. She's like, no adult had done that, right? And anyway, that's just one example of what radical vulnerability, right? Like even as adults, us owning dynamics that can be transformative. Another one is like grounding practices, right? Having ground like rituals that allow the community to pause, to reconnect with themselves. And this you'll see in COMEP in a major way on a regular basis. We have our calls, our responses. There's kind of this sort of pledge that reminds us who we are, and our togetherness. So that's another, in terms of thinking about building blocks, an area or a practice that I find to be really powerful and transformative. And you can tell this by, inviting children to describe the culture of the community. Right?
Mhm.
How do the young people and families describe what it's like to enter your space, right? And how they describe those connections. And then finally, I talked about a little bit about like studying the existing culture, but finally, cultural responsiveness, honoring the identity, the history, and lived experiences as central to the learning, not like an addendum or a separate unit, but just embedded in the fabric of the practice, embedded in the fabric of the learning. Um, so yes, those are some of the building blocks for a positive school culture that I have found to be transformative, not just in my practice, but in my teaching. Tools that I've witnessed educators and administrators take with them and bring into fruition. So
Yeah, those are great. I kind of picture it like a little like report card you give to schools. You're like, do you have this in place? Like, and I was thinking about like our kids go to a public school in our neighborhood, and I was there meeting with the assistant principal, and the announcements came on, which I didn't normally hear, and they had a little pledge that they said about being curious and confident.
that's it. That's
That's their
it.
whole thing, is curious, confident. But I'm like, oh, they do a pledge every day. I didn't know that. Like,
Exactly.
I'm like,
And then how you're able to build that conversation in and throughout the day. See, COMEP ends up being, I like to call it a living laboratory, right? Because there's so many young people. Once upon a time, there were 16 kids and 2 college students. Now we have over 160 kids and 40 plus college students and educators. So it's this sort of living laboratory. And each morning in the summertime, it's 16 days. And each morning, it's a whole routine. How we greet each other is very theatrical. There's a whole dance routine, there are songs, there are shouts, and we remind ourselves of the code of conduct, like how we conduct ourselves as a COMEP family. But they end up being tools for teachers to use throughout the day, where they can use the language. Are you expressing your feelings safely? Right? It sounds corny, but it's cute when they're able to actually use pieces from the songs that we're doing. You know, are you wearing your crown? Oop, it looks like you dropped your crown. Like, we said don't leave the house, and everybody shouts, without your crown, right? And so some of these fun reminders that come through song, they're tools. They're tools, and for not just teachers, but for even the young people as they're teaching each other. So I can imagine you hearing that pledge in the morning, and how do the adults and how do the teachers bring that into their reality throughout the day as they're celebrating who they are and or working to shift or correct behavior.
I just imagine out there, there's that part of us or a part of our brains that's like, I don't need that. I don't want to say this pledge. I don't want to do that greeting. I don't need it. But I feel like there's a part of us that really, as human beings, and it feels almost like kind of, our DNA kind of needs that to like ground us and help us locate ourselves in the moments. And like that stuff, it feels extra, but it's not. It's like
No.
so important.
I mean, those reminders are just transformative. But you like hold up your hand and pretend like it's a mirror and repeat after me. I'm inviting you. Go ahead, hold up your hand. Yes. And say, when I look
I'm a
in,
Delta and you got me holding up this mirror.
I know, but Sora, I got you. I promise. I've
All
got
right,
you,
hey, Sora,
Sora.
I'm
I've
like,
got you. All right. But you're looking in the mirror. You're pretending that this is the mirror. When I
Okay,
look in
never
the
mirror.
mirror,
When I look
repeat,
in the mirror,
when I
who
look in
do
the
I
mirror,
see?
who do I
who do
see?
I see?
A beautiful person
A beautiful
Beautiful
person
person.
looking at me.
looking at
At
me.
me.
When I look in the mirror,
When I look in the
When I
mirror,
look in the mirror,
who do I see?
who
who do
do I
I
see?
see?
An intelligent person
An intelligent
Intelligent
person
person.
looking at me.
looking at
At
me.
me.
When I look in the mirror,
When I
When I
look
look
in
in
the
the mirror,
mirror,
who do I see?
who
who do
do
I
I
see?
see?
An amazing person
An
An
amazing
amazing person.
person
looking at me.
looking
At
at me.
me.
All right, put your
There's really
mirrors
a mirror
down.
over there. I can look in the mirror. There's really a mirror.
So I'm telling, and so we're 2 years old to 17 in terms of the young people, but then multiple ages. My father and his name is my father's Fee Nunn, but also Dr. Baruch Whitehead. They're the founders of the program. And my father says, people treat people how they feel about themselves, right? And so imagine on a daily basis being able to connect with this concept, to check in with you, and then just taking that to another level as it relates to just how we contribute to a community. But I've got you, Sora.
Yes, that's so interesting. I didn't even know. And then when I was looking, I was like, I wonder, it's just something about a
Uh-huh.
aura of a woman.
Indeed. When you know, you know.
We have a certain zest for excellence, life, health, knowledge,
Come on.
so I was like,
Yeah.
okay. So that
Yeah.
just I did I'm like, she got
Yeah.
me going up this.
I know. But
I
you see,
even
it begins with the pyramid,
it does.
always.
But there was something similar, like a similar mantra that you gave in your TED talk,
Yes,
and the rhythm, the cadence.
that's it. Yeah.
Say something safe, do something safe for your body. Tell me what it is.
Yes.
I'm getting
Yes.
chills.
There's stop, think, choose peace.
Mhm.
But
I-
uh, girl, which one?
It's gonna come back to me. It's like do something
Yeah.
safe for your body. It's something along those lines.
Yes.
It's gonna come back to me.
I know, I
I'm gonna
know.
pull it
Now I'm
up.
like, wait a minute. Yes, indeed. Indeed. Many years of the work, but I got to bring that back.
Hmm. I almost like don't want to go to this question because I'm feeling so good with you guys right now, but I feel like we have to talk about what happens when it doesn't feel good. Because
Right.
like we
Hold on, I just remembered. Make safe choices with your body and your words, and then keep the peace is the response. It just took me a hot second because they're
Yeah. I was getting
indeed.
ready to run it back
Yep,
too. I was gonna
yep. And
find it.
it's shot every time. And it's so interesting that as a school psychologist was work with one child, right? Who was just handsy all over. And then he helped me teach that song to the whole school. And then, and then it was adopted in Comep every summer, but it just make safe choices and being a safe friend is what that conversation's all about. So thank you for bringing it back.
Yes, no worries.
Love that. Yeah. Okay. So yes.
Let's see what.
So what happens when schools are not this way? What happens when
Yeah,
culture turns toxic and like
yeah.
I guess it's like something I'm thinking about. Like, do schools always turn toxic in the same way? Because I think every school's strengths and the
Mm,
things that are beautiful, I think it's very unique. But I kind of wondered if some of the patterns of toxicity aren't that unique.
sure.
Like, what happens and how does that, what's the impact of that?
Yeah, I think that schools, a culture can turn toxic or is toxic essentially when fear replaces trust and like self-protection replaces honest dialogue. Toxicity, it grows in spaces where people, they don't feel psychologically safe. Um, they don't trust that their leaders will be transparent with them, or they're feeling unseen, unheard, or undervalued. If there are experiences of unresolved conflict and inequity, and just enduring constant urgency without grounding or some kind of repair. And I remember this in my practice as a school psychologist, the importance of if a child has a meltdown and whatever, and it's just sort of tragic and they leave or they're taken out or whatever, that process of return is significant. Right? We're not just going to send a baby back and we're all just going to pretend that that didn't just happen. Right? What is the process of healing and being explicit about that? And then sometimes it's something as simple as I see it even with my college students who are still traumatized by certain school experiences from middle school or high school and even as college students. And here I am like, the beauty is I'm teaching educational psychology so we can unpack it in powerful ways. But even something as simple as you asking for permission to go to the bathroom and teaching them that very early, like if you have to use the restroom, go take care of your body, right? But if you come from a place where you had to carry a tire with you down the hall and or my son goes to, we used to call it the hippie school, but it's called an alternative community school where there's this democratic process and that's performance based and all, and the children really have a say. And he was trying to encourage some students to consider applying to go to the school. And one of the selling points was some of the students is like, you don't need a hall pass to go to the bathroom. Like teachers trust you. And students be like, what? What you mean? Right? So
Autonomy, youth autonomy.
come on. And like that there, it's like I said, it's a democratic process. Once a week, they have a whole school meeting where students are like debating about certain issues or bringing up issues in the school. Very much this like teaching of the concept of a democratic process, but just that sense of feeling trusted in your learning is
Mhm.
novel for way too many of our children. And learning is so vulnerable, right? But I find some moments of class, especially in the beginning, or when I'm teaching freshmen, it's like we have to go through this like healing process because it's just so many learning experiences that have been, and students are coming from a variety of places, so the circumstances, can be very different, but there's so much that I hear or that I know that is just grounded in fear. So yeah, and toxic culture, it isn't just emotionally unpleasant. Learning simply, it can't thrive in a dysregulated environment. It impacts the nervous system
Mhm.
and how we function. So Yeah. Whew, and lots of breathing.
I think that's why it's so important to show up to a space that you like to be in
That's
every
it.
day. And I think that is why educator burnout happens
Yeah.
so quickly sometimes.
I was just gonna say
Um,
that too.
the indoctrination of spaces and systems sometimes don't always support, which took me to a whole nother thought process. One, I just want to shout out my daughter. She ran for SGA president and she
Come
won.
on.
I'm proud
That's
of her for
it.
that. Yes, but I mean, in knowing, and this is not scripted, so we're not going to spend too much time on here because I don't want us to get too far, Gracie, but like
For
just
sure.
thinking about the indoctrination of systems and sometimes school cultures and us as parents and
Yeah.
educators and advocates and wellness professionals, like if sometimes I wish I could homeschool because like or
Come on.
it's certain parts I wish I could homeschool
Yeah,
because I want them to get that nurture because if we don't hit it in youth development, we miss it.
indeed.
And it's like just when you know better, sometimes you want to make better choices. So, but we also know we got to pay the bills and we want a PPO and not an HMO. So
Indeed.
we do what we can.
All of that, all of that. I mean, you said it too, like the teacher burnout, student shutdown, or the ways in which sometimes families will feel like excluded and school becomes like reactive instead of responsive. Um, I feel you too in terms of the elements of homeschooling and even with what we operate in the summertime, you hear kids sometimes they be like, "Oh, what if school felt like this?" Right? What if school felt like Comep? And there's us, so in me, I'm like, "Ooh, and working with teachers to be like, what does it take for your classroom to feel like this, let alone the entire building?" Some of this is taking back to our roots and thinking about some of the freedom schools that we learned about from back in the day, and thinking about unpacking just even the content of what we're offering and what we're learning, and how much more connected our young people could feel to their learning experience, but also just the joy and around being in the space.
Hmm. Man, you two just make my brain go so many different places. But I am like, God, it's capitalism, right? It's like we're fundamentally like missing the point. Like we're like the whole system is set up towards this thing, and we're missing the point of like what I think schools are relevant,
Mm,
but they're not relevant for like getting those math scores up, like they're relevant as just like because families cannot do it by themselves. Like it is too much pressure on like the nuclear family to like give the kids the kind of nurture that they need. And so like if schools could be these hubs where people could come together as community and people who teaching and playing together, like there's so much opportunity in that. But I think because we're not evaluated by those metrics, it just gets really
mm,
hard for that to like really flourish. It takes very strong people to hold that when they're being pushed in such a different direction, I think.
sure. And there's also thinking about different potential structures, right? Like, I mean, we have our children in their age groups and they're in their grades, and I appreciate some elements of of Montessori like dynamics where there's some mixed age grouping and things like that. And because we approach it a lot like that in the summertime, where there's, where a 4-year-old can teach an 11-year-old, and just even those sort of out of the box wacky concepts. But if you watch any of the comment videos, you also see that oftentimes our leaders, our teachers are also parents. So there's like maybe a baby on the hip or in a backpack or on the belly while engaging a group in art lessons. So sometimes I'm also thinking about that. Like imagine, and this is that community school oriented concept where like imagine the homeschooled familial possibilities around learning as a collective. So yeah, I let myself dream, but also try it in pockets just to see and study, what if, right? Yeah, so I appreciate our thinking together.
Yes. Because learning is fun. Like it is fun. Like we like, we have to remember we like learning. It's not a
Absolutely. And it's
burden.
so human, right?
Yeah.
So even when you hear like, oh, so and so doesn't want to learn, I'm like, that's not very human. Like, of course they want to learn.
Yeah, what's wrong? Like what
Right.
can you help
What do
them
we want to learn?
with? Dominique, you want to ask this next one here?
So I feel like our conversation kind of hit 4. Should we hit 4 or do you want to go straight to 5? You
How
tell
we
me.
change it?
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we should talk about change because I wonder if there are leaders out there who are
Mm.
like, I want this, and I have the to-do list that they have. I just saw principal's to-do list. It was scary. She
Mhm.
showed it to me. I was like, there's too many things on that list. But how do you do this? How do you make this kind of change? And then I'm also curious about how to make a change without leadership buy-in, because I do see that being a huge thing about teachers that really love the students, they want to stay in their schools, but because the leadership is not setting the tone, it's become very hard for them to stay.
Mm. No, that's it's such a good question. And immediately in terms of that, there's also just thinking about, because I've listened to teachers express that concern, and in certain environments where there is a lot of like a us versus them, or teachers that'll be like, I have this idea, but I don't know, I fear that I'll be just trampled over with it. And sometimes it's like, well, study who your people are, and perhaps there are a collective, maybe there are additional teachers or models of what's possible. But just in terms of thinking about the larger concept around um, if a culture needs to change, I think culture change, we talked about it a little bit, but it begins with the nervous system regulation, and I think relational repair. So people need to be grounded enough to be honest, I think to be brave, to be radically vulnerable. I always start with these questions though, like what's the pain point that everyone's feeling, but avoiding and not naming. Sometimes that's harder to get the answers to in a large group, but but just giving people an opportunity to process that. So sometimes I'll do exercises inviting people to write, and like you don't have to share what you're writing, but get it out. Um, and then who's hurting, who's holding, who's hiding, and what needs to be said out loud, then creating structures for radical vulnerability. I'm a huge fan of circles, getting in circles where people have to look at each other, they have to face each other. Being grounded in transparent communication, or establishing these type of communication norms. And then, just the different ways that we can rebuild trust, one conversation at a time. So can culture change without leadership buy-in? I think yes. But sometimes only partially and only temporarily. Right? You
Honest,
can't,
that's honest.
you can't ignite these pockets of healing and build small cultures of care within teams and within classrooms. But for systemic cultural transformation, leadership has to shift, because culture, it's shaped by what leaders model, allow, and prioritize. But I think maybe before getting there, because I know there's some circumstances where it just seems like there's just such a thick and brick wall. But if teachers are able to model a certain something in that classroom community and families and blah, and now those numbers grow, and we're all like modeling that, then you can't, and maybe this is me in my lofty, aspirational, dreamy world, but as a leader, like, how are you gonna look and see this incredible, impactful joy and passion and not jump on the bandwagon too? Um, yeah, so forgive me if I approach and it seems dreamy, but just creating circumstances where there is hope, and that can grow, and that can expand. One student, then one classroom at a time, if not the entire building. The other thing I always tell teachers is, eh, what's the mission and what's the vision? And now I know that oftentimes we're talking words, but how might we bring that to life or utilize that to hold folks accountable for honoring a culture that's possible, or a community that we claim to be? And so sometimes it is about utilizing or reconnecting with those concepts, those missions, those visions, and you're modeling what that looks like a certain kind of way. Who can object to it? We're here. Look at us. We are honoring this thing that is associated with who we say we are. And so, yeah, I tend to be hopeful
I
and
think
to work out. But what's coming to mind?
I think that oftentimes when we um, think of school improvement or school cultures, we often wish we could take our magic wand and wave them and allow our utopias to, come to life and things of that nature. So, if we were to talk about our educational system, because much of the school culture does rely on the school principal and the admin and the leadership team. If we were to, because I heard you say that we can change school culture with and without admin buy-in, and that we could change school culture with teachers, but it might not be sustainable. Looking at those two ends of the spectrum, what are some things that you feel like we need systemically to be able to sustain a change in school
Sure.
culture so that they don't fall apart when
Got it.
great charismatic leaders do move on and transition?
Ooh, I love that question. And my immediate response is inviting everyone to wear their like scholarly head wrap. And what I mean by that is, how do we, as the classroom teachers, as the students, as the families, and whatever leaders and helping professionals like the social workers or school psychologists, even speech pathologists, the music teachers, whoever, collecting data,
Mm,
collecting data, if we all are in this groove and getting excited about the power, because once upon a time, I know data was like a bad word in the school because it was an accountability factor, and it was just people felt like punished by data. But what about the possibility of celebrating data, especially as we're acknowledging not just what's wrong, but what's working? And the impact. And I'm talking not just quantitative data like our scores, I'm talking qualitative data. I'm talking about the testimonials, the quotes that are linked to the joyful practice, or the new or novel, or the potential for abolition. Like, if we can collect that data, have that information, and celebrate it as a community, but it involves everybody seeing themselves as like scholars of this information. So I tend to think it's, how creative can we get as it relates to not only collecting data, but analyzing the data as a
mm,
community as well. And I'm talking about from pre-K all the way up, all the way up, where there are a variety of other learning expectations that can be a part of the data collection process, right?
mm,
Including quantitative. But that's it. That's one. I'm trying to also just give a little bit of an example. It might be a stretch, but I know this past summer, so we've had some issues around attendance
mhm,
over the past several years, like, when there's pandemic connections and all of that. So this summer, we decided that we were going to be scientist practitioners. Like shampoo and conditioner, because I'm corny, you gotta like rhyme some stuff, right? And we were studying our sleep as
wow.
a community. How many hours do you sleep? How many hours do you sleep? And for a
Mhm,
few days, you're going to come in with a post-it and you're going to share your hours of sleep. And then we'll do the calculation to see, on average, as a community, how well are we sleeping? Now let's talk about our sleeping practices, our night routines, our morning routines, and blah, blah, blah. And that's just one example, but it's been it was a huge issue for some time in many of our schools, this dynamic around attendance. So just modeling that in the summertime has been attractive for some teachers and some schools. It's like, okay, so we have this issue or we're being cited about whatever, whatever. How can we all engage in a study as a community versus being studied by someone else?
Right.
That we take ownership of our data and our data analysis process and we make it fun and we have cute, corny songs and sayings associated with it, but we're tuned into this deemed problem, that has been, or the ways in which we are being demonized as a school or as a community. How can we put a funky twist on that? And I tend to invite everybody to put on their scholarly head wrap. And let's study it together so we can celebrate it together too.
I knew we were going to get back to alchemy in here. Is that out? You're doing alchemy there, right? That's it. We're
That's it. Where it just seems like magical,
yeah.
right? It seems magical, but that that you get to contribute to that magic. And that there's just honoring that it's a journey and that we may have some outliers in the data. But if we have a grounded practice in our togetherness or how we be with one another, then a variety of issues that come up, that's a part of the process. We embrace it. But there's this magic where we let ourselves dream.
It goes right back to that radical vulnerability. So the
It-
example that I was thinking about was I felt like you gave a good one the first time when you were talking about a principal maybe walking by a classroom that has things that are working. If things are
That's it.
working, we should be reflective and open enough as a community to be able to adapt that.
That's it.
Easy. So yeah.
That's it. And then here's if everybody's embracing this data collection culture, right? Then you ask a 4-year-old, ask a 7-year-old, ask a parent, right? Then there are other entities in addition to like the culture of a classroom. When it's good, when it's powerful, there are ripple effects across the school and throughout the hallway where a leader's like, oh, I get to lead this, right? Where it's like, you almost feel left out, like, but also like, this is who we are. It's like allowing the children, allowing the teachers, allowing the families to teach leadership what's possible.
I love it.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this is all that you are a teacher of the art of possibility. So we're here.
And like I said, I said earlier, my father said people treat people how they feel about themselves. And so it's like acknowledging when there are folks in admin or leadership roles that it just seems so intense or so, it's like, whoa, what's really going on?
Mhm.
Right? And it's like as harsh and as intense as that person may be in their practice and their delivery, they may need a taste of joy or something that's interfering with the ability to celebrate what's happening. But when there's joy all around you, like, you what? You gonna
Well,
deny that? You're gonna deny this ripple effect of what's working and this positive sense of self that these children are breathing when they walk down the hall? Yeah.
mm,
Dr. Nia, thank you so much for being with us and sharing. Thank you for sharing how you feel about yourself with us, because that was really beautiful. And I do feel that mirror. And yeah, just for everyone listening right now, like I went to a conference yesterday and they said in this conference, you can either be an observer, you can be a cynic, or you can be contributor. You have to decide which one you want to be. And I thought that was a good way to say it, because I've been all of those in environments, and it's better when I'm a contributor. I'll say that.
That's it. And that mirror experience is shared, right? It's that's a collective self-study. So envision an entire school, 300 human beings at the same time, regularly pausing and reflecting on themselves like that, and just watch the ripple effect.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
School culture is so important.
Dr. Nia, do you want to tell the people how to stay in touch with you and get to know you more?
Yes, yes. So my website, drnianunn.com is one way. I'm also all on the Instagram. The college students said, Dr. Nia, you need to get just share on Instagram. So I'm, at Dr. Nia Nun on Instagram is another way to just kind of be tuned into what's happening in my realm. But I'm also happy to shout out my email address if folks are interested in connecting directly. I can be contacted at greetings@drnianunn.com. So it's a joy to connect with you all, and I hope to get to DC at some point to do some work with you all directly, whether that be in the schools or through your practice. I love Ithaca. I love being home, and I say as long as I can travel, I'm happy to be home.
I am sure that we can find some alignment and opportunities to be
Come
able
on.
to partner and collaborate here so you can
Yeah,
come on down to this good city.
indeed,
A lot
indeed. That
going
would
on
be
here, but it's still a good
Yeah, we
city.
need you
I
here.
believe
Come
it.
here. We need all that good energy
Happy,
right here, right now.
happy to be there for sure. So thank you again for this invitation.
Thank
Yes.
you for
All
spending
right.
time
Thanks
with us.
everyone for listening. Have a wonderful weekend. See you all. Bye bye.